Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of Full Steam Ahead. I'm your host, Zoe. Football season is now officially over. The Houston Texans did not get the job done against the New England Patriots. What a game that was, and uh, disappointing performance from CJ Stroud. But hey, they're gonna have to wait for next year. But this would have been their greatest chance to go to a Super Bowl, especially knowing Bo Nix had season-ending ankle surgery. You had no Lamar Jackson, you had no Joe Burrow, you had no Patrick Mahomes. It was wide open for the Texans, and the Texans just couldn't get it done. If you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, of course, that season had already ended pretty damn quickly. But yeah, H Town baseball season has now arrived. We are 65 days until opening day, 32 days until spring training, and 22 days until pitchers and catchers report to spring training for the Houston Astros West Palm Beach area. Sorry about getting on a little late. We were watching the College Football National Championship. What a run for the Indiana Hoosiers. I love baseball, but of course, too, I love me some college football, some basketball as well. But this year for college football is just a great story. A kid like Fernando Mendoza for the Hoosiers, and then even Miami, number 10 ranked, went to Texas A&M, beat my alma mater down, took care of business against Ohio State, and then beat who was the other team they beat? Not it was Ohio State and Ole Miss. That was a good game right there too to get to the national championship, especially to host it. I thought that was pretty damn cool for the Hurricanes. But just a great overall season for college football. You cannot describe that atmosphere of any college sports. You couldn't even say it for basketball. You couldn't even say it for baseball. But college baseball too is fixing to start, of course, in the month of February. Houston's going to be hosting the College Classic, of course, here in Dyken Park. A lot of things to be going through Dyken Park really these next upcoming months. You have Astros Fan Fest starting this coming weekend. If you haven't got your tickets now, you need to make sure you get your tickets. I believe they're $2 vouchers, if I'm not mistaken, to get in to Dyken Park for the Houston Astros. Of course, you got the autographs. You have playing catch on the field, hitting in the cages, throwing on the bullpen mound as well. And then they just have a bunch of things going around the stadium too, taking pictures with Orbit. They have a garage sale from all the promotions that they had put out, as well as some pretty interesting gear as well that they'll put out for sale. And if you're a fan, you can be able to grab it for your memorabilia or your man cave, or ladies, your she shed, or you can just buy some gear getting ready for the upcoming 2026 MLB season for the Houston Astros. But like I was saying, besides FanFest, you got the College Classic coming at Dyken Park. And then the next upcoming month is the World Baseball Classic. If you are a fanatic of baseball and just a fanatic in general of, looking at the countries, especially FIFA World Cup coming in for the soccer tournament at NRG Stadium, just think about the WBC happening at Dyken Park for the very first time ever, hosting in the city of Houston. And the first series to just sell out like that was Mexico versus USA. So hopefully if you really want to see that competition right there, I believe it's probably one of the most electric ones. If you did see the WBC game in Arizona, the atmosphere out there looked electric, and it'd be cool to be able to witness that and see how everything goes. But the WBC happening in March, and then obviously that last week of March, you're going to get the MLB regular season opening day for the Astros. I think they're going to be opening up with the Los Angeles Angels. I like to still call them Anaheim Angels. There's just no way of doubt of calling it that, but MLB put LA Angels. However, we got a lot to get through today. Title of this episode: Will the Astros trade Isaac Paredes? Because there have been a lot of things going down, a lot of moves been happening. The hot stove's been cooking, heating up. All of that's been going through. So we got our agenda on the side right there. Should Paredes be traded to Boston? What should the package kind of look like? The Astros payroll, of course, with all these moves happening, of course, getting Tatsuya gives the Astros a little bit of flexibility to see what they want to do there still. I know they still want to be making some moves here and there. We got a video of Jim Crane talking about the luxury tax and stuff like that happening in just a second. Astros arbitration deals had happened in the past week or two now, but if you didn't know about the deals and you didn't know about the contract situations, we'll up to date everybody with that. And of course, there was two Astros that did not agree to terms, and they will be going to an arbitration hearing, which is not a good thing. But of course, that is the business of baseball, and it's some miscellaneous things. A lot of former Astro players getting signed. I know there's some two big ones for sure. Ryan Presley, of course, and happy retirement to him, and for his seasons of baseball with the Twins, the Astros, and the Cubs. Of course, notably Houston being the most success of his career. I believe it was 6.5 seasons. Why I say have is because getting traded at the deadline, and he arrived at Houston, I believe, in 15 or not 15. It was 18. I don't know why I thought 15, but anyway, we'll talk about that. And then, of course, there's just a lot to get through. We got to get you up and going for Astros Fan Fest, because I'm pretty sure some of the players are going to be there. Media members are going to be able to talk to each and every one of them, as well as the general manager and the head coach, manager in Joe Espada. But let's start off with the biggest news, and that is for y'all to follow us on our social media platforms. Of course, we got our TikTok right there, our Twitter right there with the Twitter bird. Of course, it's X now, but we still like to call it Twitter Full Steam Ahead, FSA Full Steam Ahead on Instagram. And of course, our YouTube channel has been growing. If you haven't seen, we had the press conference of Tatsuya Amai's whole conference on there. So make sure you go out there and give it a view, give it a like, everything like that. But for future interviews with players and coaches, that's why I said FanFest is coming up. We're going to be there covering that to give the information out for our audience members. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and hit that notification bell so you will not miss any of those interviews with the players, coaches, and stuff like that. And of course, we got on our podcast platform, so Spotify to Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. Like, rate, subscribe, give us some feedback, give us some comments. We love the interaction with the audience. So if you want to join in and buzz in what the Astros should do with Isak Paredes, because that is what we're going to be talking about as of right now. And this is coming from John Heyman, of course, working for the New York Post. If you don't know who John Heyman is, lots of writing for in the New York Post, as well as shows himself on MLB Network. But this is from him. It says, quote, "The Red Sox are talking to Houston, which has an infield glut," which it's true, "and could deal Isak Paredes," in quote. And we've talked about this numerous times on this podcast. Like, it is nothing new that the Houston Astros have an infield dilemma. It's a good dilemma. However, it's a lot of depth and a lot of players that could potentially start on any other team. And we can go real quick through the list. Third base, if you want to slide through right there, you got Carlos Correa and you got Isak Paredes. At shortstop, you have Jeremy Pena. We'll even throw Nick Allen in there, who the Astros acquired in that Mauricio Dubon trade to the Braves. At second base, you have Jose Altuve. And if he makes the MLB roster for opening day, it could potentially be a Bryce Matthews, but we're not going to put him there just yet. But that's just potentially just in case for the opening day roster. And then at first base, as of right now, we have Christian Walker, and catcher you have Yainer Diaz. But if you want to throw Zach Dezinder, he can even throw at first base. However, talking about the infield, I mean, it's a good thing to have, because these players, I mean, Walker, Paredes, them are your power bats, and them are the guys that you acquired last year to help out this team supply that power in that lineup. And of course, Christian Walker didn't have the best of season last year. He did have a decent second half of his season offensively. However, it wasn't what Houston expected. They were expecting a 25 plus, 30 plus home runs, 100 something RBIs, which, like I said, Walker was pretty close to getting 100 RBIs. He finished with in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken, in runs batted in, and the home runs was close to 25 home runs. So it wasn't a bad offensive season. It was a very slow start for him to get going offensively. But when the second half kind of started getting through, he started hitting the ball really well. He started seeing the ball, 270 something batting average, a WRC plus over 100. So he was getting the feel things. He was getting the groove, like his time with Arizona. Of course, like I said, a lot of Astro fans were to see that version of him come from Arizona with a 3 plus home run, 100 RBI, the WRC plus over 130. So you didn't see that. And right now with Houston, who's going to be playing what position? Carlos Correa, when you traded for him, and this was a shocker for me. I didn't think the Astros necessarily needed Correa, but he does bring a great voice into the clubhouse leadership as well. So there was no negotiating knowing that he was not going to be on. He was definitely in Houston's radar. However, that's when you bring this whole to the infield. Third base, no, it's going to be like a career. Shortstop, still have Pena there. Second base is where you can get you can with it with Altuve potentially playing left field last season, as well as you throw Isak Perez there, combine some games. If Altuve plays that field, plug in Paredes at second base. It's the same thing. If Ray needs an off day, you could put Paredes at third base. As well with the first base situation too. Houston doesn't have necessarily backup first baseman right now. As of right now, in my opinion, it's starting first baseman Christian Walker, and after Christian Walker, you can plug in Cesar Paredes, who's played at least one game in the Mexican Winter League at the other side of the hot corner. But I mean, it wasn't very impactful. Very he did some Gold Glove worthy defensive game, but that would probably be your backup, as well as Zach DeZenzo. He can be a potential backup at first base. Just like I say with Altuve, if you need to put him in left field, you need to put him in the DH. You put Jordan Alvarez in left field. You put Isak Perez at second base. So it's just a lot of moving pieces. And I think Houston would not want to do that. However, this team, when you put it on paper offensively, at least if you construct this lineup, it's a bat that you desperately need to have in that lineup with Isak Paredes. There's no doubt about that. And what he gives you is play discipline. He gives you an at bat when he works the count. He always puts at least 6 to 8 pitches in an at bat that he takes. And if he goes down swinging after 8 pitches or 9 pitches, hey, that's a quality at bat in the book. And for Paredes, I think that's what, to me, if Houston loses Paredes, that's going to hurt their lineup, because this is a guy that has a really great play discipline at the plate, and that's what you really need. You need guys to work the count. If you remember last year, offensively, the Astros were not really great when it came to pitches per at bat. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it was about an average of 3 to 4 pitches in at bat. That, just think about it. You need 3 pitches to get out, at least for a strikeout. Though 3 to 4 pitches in that bat, that's not going to give you a lot of success. That's going to give the pitcher less pitches to throw in each inning. Like, let's say he throws 20 pitches in 3 innings. It's because you got guys swinging at the first pitch. You have guys swinging at the second pitch, and you have to work the count. And that's where the Astros missed Paredes as soon as Paredes left for that hamstring injury against Seattle. And that was a big, heavy loss for Houston. But we could talk a little bit more about Isak Paredes, potentially a candidate for the Boston Red Sox, as well as the Astros looking at packages in return. Because as of right now, Dana Brown said that there's no looking at sending Paredes anywhere. However, you never know what can happen in this industry. And this comes from Chandler Rome. Quote, Boston expressed interest in Isak Paredes during the winter meetings, and now without Bregman, who did sign a contract with the Chicago Cubs, could re-engage in its pursuit of Houston's pull-happy third baseman. Multiple team sources have indicated the Astros have no interest in moving Paredes, but also maintain he must get regular at-bats for Houston's lineup to reach its full potential. And the quote continues on. Paredes is available to the 2026 Astros, but could shopping him yield something just as important? Houston outfield is unsettled. Boston dangles either Don Rafaela or Jarren Duran in any potential discussions for Paredes. Listen, ? It'd be foolish not to. End quote. And that's from Chandler Rome's quote from The Athletic. That's the Astros writer for The Athletic. We could continue on real quick with this quote. This from Per Mac. This quote, I'm not 100% sure if it's a valuable source. I do want to say what I said, but I'm not, to me, I haven't seen any credible source regarding this. This is what he said. Red Sox talks with the Astros regarding Paredes have intensified in recent days. Per sources, multiple avenues have been discussed. Astros like Bayo and Duran, among others, both are seemingly available via trade, but will require more on top for us to get it done. Quote. So for me, I'm not really confident in that quote and that source that he has sources on his thing. But of course, with this internet and social media, they can fax you each and every other way. But we can't agree though that the Red Sox do have a lot of interest in Isak, and some names that have been thrown into rumors and in articles and things like that. Jarren, obviously, Sedon Rafaelo, like Chandler had mentioned too. Brian Bayo's other guy. Boston has young pitching uh, veterans on their staff. Jake Myers is another guy that can still potentially be on the move, as well as I don't think this guy's going anywhere, but Spencer Rigetti could be another guy that could potentially be in a deal with any other team, not just the Red Sox, as well as goes for Jake Myers too. So Paredes, of course, with his arbitration hearing, when everybody came to arbitration eligible, trying to get that 1 year contract out the way, well, he did not agree into terms with the Astros on arbitration. Paredes wanted 9.95 million. Houston submitted their price at 8.75 million. So it wasn't a huge gap. It was just maybe under a million. Though Houston's trying to save as much money as they can because they are not finished at what they're doing. They still need a backup catcher. They would still like to go get a left-handed hitter, and they would still like to look at some type of reliever to bolster their bullpen. I think maybe one arm could get in there, but if not, then you're going to roll the dice with this bullpen that's going right now. And I think it's a decent bullpen. Don't get me wrong. You got guys like Ben Souza who took a big jump. Brian King's another guy that took a big jump. Of course, you still got your back end of that bullpen with Josh Hader and Brian Abreu. De Los Santos is still there. So you still have your guys that had helped you last year to be a decent, successful bullpen when it came to games. However, I think they should add another reliever. But going back to Paredes, I mean, what kind of package could it look like? And let's say the Astros and Red Sox, you know what? Let's do 1-for-1. If you want Jarren Duran, then we'll take Isak Paredes, and that could be a 1-for-1 deal. And that's a fair one as well, because Jarren Duran's contract, he has 2 years of arbitration still happening. Same goes for Isak Paredes. He still has 2 years of arbitration. And when you look at players who are under contract, especially with the arbitration year still in their contract, like you can go for Paredes. Jake Myers also has 1 year left of arbitration left on his contract. You best believe that the front office is going to do what's best to try to get the most out of their players in return. And for Isak Paredes and Jarren Duran, both of them have 2 years. And if they want to do for 1-for-1, I mean, that's pretty fair because both those guys are still young. I think Jarren Duran's a little older. If I'm not mistaken, he just turned 29 years old, or he is 29 years old. Isak Paredes, on the other hand, is 26, more valuable in the infield. Same goes for Duran, very valuable guy in the outfield. Could play left field. He could play center field for you. And the speed, the power, the contact. If the Astros do get Jarren Duran, that is a good player to put in your lineup. I don't know if you put him in the leadoff spot because you already have Jeremy Pena there. I don't know if you put him at the 2-hole behind Pena. You go with that right lefty, right left kind of thing on their lineup card. But that is an interesting player to put on your roster and your lineup in the outfield. I mean, it just makes the lineup more. It's like if you got a Jake Myers, but with a bigger bat and with bigger speed and bigger arm strength. Not to mention the dude works out a lot and has some guns on him. But if you get Duran, you're not missing anything to me. I think it'd be a good move for Houston because you wanted a left-handed hitter and free agency. Well, if you do this trade, you get a left-handed hitter, you get a guy that can patrol center field if you do decide to trade away Jake Myers, and you have a guy that has a really good arm, honestly, too, not to mention. He could be a 30 for 30 guy if you want him to. To me, I think he'd probably be like 20-20 or 20-25, 25-25. But the speed is there. And I think if you hit it in the gap at Dyken Park in left center, right center gap, that's an easy triple for him. And he had a career high in triples in his 25 season, if I'm not mistaken, with 13, or it was this past season um, with the Red Sox with 13. And Fenway Park isn't a really hitters friendly ballpark unless you hit it towards pesky pole and that ball just keeps rolling onto the outfield in the on the track. Then by all means, that's triple alley for him. But for Duran, if he hits in Houston, which I believe too, he's really a good hitter when he came to Dyken Park. I remember the first game. If it wasn't last year, it was 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, we'll talk about his stats here in a minute. But the way he hit the ball at Houston, I mean, he used the whole field. He had left field, right center, left center, gap to gap, down the lines. Even has some power for a home run. And this was a guy too that Alex Cora was very, very high on when I talked to him about Duran, talking about the speed, the confidence that he wants to bring into him. Because at the moment he was hitting at the bottom of the lineup, but he decided to put him at the top of the line to get his confidence going. And sure enough, I mean that 2024 season for Duran was one of his best of his career. Of course, if you remember the All-Star game too, he won All-Star game MVP. That was an awesome story I was able to witness and write and talk to his family about too. But if you could get a 2024 version, sorry about that, of Jarren Duran, and this has been his best year: 8.7 WAR, 48 doubles, 14 triples, 21 home runs, 75 RBIs, 34 stolen bases, slash line, 100, 285, 342, 34. So, and like I said, all-star for his first time in his career, finished MVP voting in the American League at 8th. And last year, it wasn't a bad year. It wasn't, I wouldn't even consider it a down year either. But 4.7 WAR was, this is stats from last year. 4.7 WAR, 4 doubles, 13 triples. The power was just a little, 16 home runs, 84 RBIs, did gain about 9 runs batted in right there, 24 stolen bases. That number could have gone a little bit up, but it went down. The strikeout ratio from last 2024-25 was 160 to 169. So he swung out of the plate a little bit more, just getting 9 strikeouts. Slash line 256, 332, 442 slugging. OPS was a 774. So that's above average right there, as well as his OPS plus is a 114. So that's what I'm saying. If you do a 1-for-1 right there, and for me, I think Houston should try to find a way to keep Paredes and figure out a way to kind of restructure this infield. However, it might not get done. And what's going to be the best thing for Houston if teams aren't going to want Christian Walker? Because you got to remember too, Houston just can't trade Walker to any team. He has a no trade clause. That no trade clause gives him the right to accept a trade wherever he wants to go. Think about last year with not free agency, but with just the offseason in general in the winter. So trying to get a third baseman, they looked and knocked on the door with Nolan Arenado. Both the teams agreed, but Arenado said, "You know what? No, I don't feel comfortable with it, so I'm putting my no trade right there." And that was shipped to Houston. Well, this could be the same thing with Walker. Let's say the Padres, because the Padres do get a first baseman right now. San Diego and Houston agrees. However, Walker has that capability to just block it and say, no, I'm not going nowhere because I do not want to go to San Diego. So for Houston, at least in the front office and the business aspect, they would need to find a team that would want Christian Walker. And as of right now, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Christian Walker is going to be traded anywhere. He still has 2 more years on that contract. He's getting $20 million each year, so 40 total wise. And especially too that he is 34 years old, he can help a team out. Don't get me wrong, But 34-year-old first baseman, they just like I was talking about his last season, you saw how slow he was in the beginning of the season offensively for the Astros. And teams could look at that and be like, well, you know what? I don't want to run the risk of bringing a guy like that. Started slow offensively. Maybe he doesn't even potentially go into the second half of the season and contributes to his offensive numbers. So there's a number factor right there. And as well, Chandler Rome had also mentioned on one of his articles too last week that the trade interest between Walker and other teams remains like non-existent. So Houston, more than likely, and I know a lot of Astro fans would like to see the Astros trade Walker away, but I've always been firm saying Houston needs a defensive first baseman. They saw that experiment after Yuli Gurriel left. Jose Abreu did a decent job in his first year with Houston, but that next year struggling offensively, made an error here and there at first base. It's always good to have a good defensive first baseman, especially for your infielders. Like a Correa, if he has to do a one hop or two hop. Same goes for Jeremy Pena. If he has to go on his backhand and make a jump throw like Derek Jeter and need a scoop from Christian Walker. Same goes for Jose Altuve, going up the middle, doing the same thing as Pena, or having to go to his glove side, not his glove side, but his left side, and having to make a 360 defensive play. You always need a guy that's going to be able to pick up your infielders, pick up your pitchers too when it comes to PFPs. If you don't know what PFP is, pitchers fielding practice, you need a good defensive first baseman. And I think that's what, for me, when the Astros did get him, I thought it was for both the offense and the defense. But for me, it was more defensively because you're getting a 3-time Gold Glove winner at the other position where you had to platoon guys in 2024 of John Singleton, Mauricio Dubon, Yainer Diaz, Victor Caratini. So it just makes sense. However, if it had to choose between Paredes and Walker, I would think Paredes is your best value for the future of this organization because he's 26 years old. Walker, obviously, 2 more years, and he's going to be 36 to 37 years old. Who do you think, obviously, is going to be the guy that you would want to keep on your organization? It's going to be Isaac Paredes. And like I mentioned with the offensively, defensive too, he didn't do a bad job. I've talked to Tony Perez Chica, the infield coach that always works with the infielders before game time. He's one of the guys that kind of stepped up and had a good radar in spring training for Perez Chica. Like defensively, he improved on his mechanics and stuff like that. And, you know, if you do lose Paredes, it's a balanced trade. It's a fair trade. And Houston gets its left-handed hitter as well as an outfielder that can play center or left field with a good arm, good speed, as well as the offensive with pop and contact. And then if you want to get a little bit more crazy, you can look at a Brian Bayo. You could look at a Peyton Tolley. You could look at I'm a fumble the first name. I can't remember the first name at the top of my head for Boston. But early, he pitched really well in the wild card against the New York Yankees. If you get those 2 young athletes, them 2 young southpaw pitchers from Boston, or if you get a Brian Bayo, that just bolsters your rotation a little bit more and it helps them out. For Houston, though, if you get Bayo, you would need Boston to kind of pay a little bit more of his contract because he did sign an extension with the Red Sox, I believe, 2 years ago in 23. So you would have to look into that. For Houston, if they do decide to trade one of them 3 or 2 of them 3, more than likely you're going to have to pay a little bit more price as well. And that's where you can put up Jake Myers. For Boston, of course, their priority for the infield this offseason free agency was getting Alex Bregman back, finding a way to re-sign him. Couldn't get him. Who they pivot to? They pivot to a starting pitcher in Ranger Suarez, which I honestly thought that was an underrated move. Really good rotation now for Beantown with the Red Sox. I mean, you got Garrett Crochet, Ranger Suarez. If you stick with it, Brian Bayo, Sonny Gray. So they got some dudes over there, and that's what can maybe potentially go in the trade market, like the St. Louis Cardinals, for example. Brendan Donovan's still out there. And they can put guys like Tolley and early in these trade packages because they know they have a bunch of depth in their rotation. So that's what they could do for Houston. You can potentially trade Jake Myers in a deal like that. He has another arbitration year after 26 and 27. He won't hit free agency until 2028. But they got a Gold Glove center fielder right now with Ceddanne Rafaela. And if Rafaela wants to look into playing infield, which I don't think that's ever going to happen, because if you do get Isaac Paredes, third base is going to be him, shortstop, Trevor Story, second base, he's still got Marcelo Meyer or Romy Gonzalez, and first base right now, Wilson Contreras, who they just acquired from the Cardinals as well. So they could play and they could have some fun with that, but it wouldn't make sense for them to maybe get Jake Myers. If they do get Jake Myers, of course he's going to patrol center. I would think, this is just my opinion, throwing it out there, and maybe putting Rafaela at left field or in right field. So that's what they can do as of right now. But like I mentioned, then just taking this thing out of contrast, if the Astros do decide to trade Isaac Paredes, it does make sense to trade with the Boston Red Sox and acquire a left-handed hitter in Jarren Duran, who has 2 years of arbitration still on his contract, just like Isaac Paredes. And I already explained so many times, I'm not going to explain it again. And then for Boston, I mean, that just helps them. So you're kind of scratching each other's back, helping each other to just bolster your roster. And like I said, if they want to make it a little bit more fun, putting another starting pitcher in this deal, putting another outfielder in this deal, those are the guys that you can be looking at. Like I said, for Boston, if they wanted to bolster more of a package around for Paredes, you're going to look at guys like Early, Tolley, as well as Bayo. And for the Astros, of course, you throw Eric Getty, but you're going to possibly have to look at a prospect going out as well. If it's not a prospect, it's another MLB ready player. They could potentially probably ask for Bryce Matthews, as well as some other guys. I think they're really set at catching position with Carlos Narvaez, who really explored really well with the Red Sox last year after the Yankees dealt him to Boston. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting next couple days going into the week. Like I said, FanFest media members, hopefully we have the chance to talk to Dana Brown as well as Joe Espada, see what's going on. If there's any movement, of course, we won't know until that potentially day. And of course, if the trade happens, or if a trade happens regarding Paredes or Walker, because I think them are the only two guys that make sense for a trade as of right now, we're going to be able to break it down and get that video out as an emergency podcast. So just throw in the comments. What do you think about the whole thing? What do you think if Paredes should stay in Houston? Should he be traded away? Who should he be traded to? But as of right now, it looks like the Red Sox, because of course, too, not to mention they missed out on Bo Bichette. So can they trust Marcelo Meyer? Of course they can, because Marcelo Meyer was a top 3 prospect. And of course, they still got Christian Campbell, who they gave a contract extension as soon as he made it to the league. So we are not officially sure what kind of trades are going to happen, if it's going to be the Boston Red Sox as well too. So it makes sense. Like I said, it's a fair deal, but we'll just have to see what comes down to it. And speaking of flexibility, trying to figure out with the next deal for the Houston Astros, dealing a package like Paredes, you free up some money. And like I had mentioned in our Paredes talks, he did not get a deal done. He's going to have to go into an arbitration hearing with Houston. And as of right now, the money that Houston has is $238.4 million. The luxury tax, on the other hand, is $244 million. And Jim Crane did talk to the Astros media members about the luxury tax, talked, of course, with Tatsuya Imai's contract, and just talked in general about expanding in the Asia market. Well, of course, the important thing for him and Astro fans would want to know is what is going on with money-wise. Are you going to go over the luxury tax? Is there still bigger moves that you want to make? And we have a video right here, and I'm going to switch it right now to it.
The luxury tax is a luxury tax. I feel like we made a luxury move, but we have the opportunity to maneuver that around. you know, everybody writes that I'm afraid of the electric tax. I'm not necessarily afraid of it, but I run the team like a business, and there's only so much resources you can put to it without, you know, going in the deep in the hole. So we don't operate like a lot of the bigger market teams, but you've seen over the years we'll spend the money when we think it's right, and we'll be aggressive when we have to be. I think this template has been there for a long time. You've seen every deadline we've made some pretty big moves.
And that was coming from Jim Crane. And if you couldn't really hear what he was saying, I'll read a quote from that conversation just right there. And it says, quote, if everybody writes that I'm afraid of the luxury tax, Crane said, I'm not necessarily afraid of it, but I run the team like a business, and there's only so much resources you can put into it without going deep in the hole. We don't operate like a lot of the bigger market teams, but you've seen over the years, we'll spend the money when we think it's right, and we'll be aggressive when we have to be, end quote. And you can't say, and I know there's a lot of Astro fans out there that feel like he doesn't spend, but I mean, the Astros are one of the most spending money teams, at least in the top 10. I believe, if not mistakenly, they were ranked 7, 6, or 8 in payroll. And of course, in order to get Carlos Correa, Houston was going to have to pay some of that contract. And Jim Crane basically said, you know what? I want the move. I like it. Correa would be still a good fit in Houston. You know, we'll pay some of that money on his contract from Minnesota. And that's what he did. You saw the big move, of course, last year, getting Christian Walker for those. That was a 3-year, $60 move, AAE-wise, in each year. And like I said, Astro fans would want to see the extension talks of getting Hunter down, or getting a guy like Yainer Diaz down, or you know, Cam Smith as well. But like he said, he runs the team like a business. He is a businessman. He knows what he is doing regarding with money. And of course, like Dana Brown had always mentioned, when we talk to Jim, Jim's always the whole, he's always listening. He's always giving okay to go out there and look at some of these guys. So the Astros, as of right now, have under $6 million before they hit that luxury tax. And they did that by, honestly, they saved a decent small amount of money when it came to arbitration hearings with some of these other players. And I got some of the numbers for you. Hayden Wesneski, $975,000. Stephen O'Kurt, $2.235 million. Bennett Sousa, $910,000. Jake Myers, $3.55 million. Hunter, $5.71 million. Jeremy Pena, $9.475 million. Jesus Sanchez, $6.8 million. Nick Allen, $1.4 million. The only two Astros that did not agree to terms with the players and Houston itself was, of course, I mentioned Paredes and Yainer Diaz, who filed for $4.5 million, and Houston came back and put a number like $3 million. So Houston has saved some money regarding when it came to comparing numbers in the very beginning from Spot Track and MLB Trade Rumor, having them numbers of what their projections could look like and what Houston has right now. And it's helped them big time. And of course, too, not to mention, Houston could still trade people and these players. They could still trade Paredes, and that saves them money. They could still trade Jake Myers. That saves them money. They can trade still Jesus Sanchez. That will save them money as well, too. So I don't think Houston's done, because right now, the Astros need a backup catcher. Who's going to be the backup catcher for the Houston Astros come 2026? You can put a very familiar face with this pitching staff and Cesar Salazar, who has shown the organization that he's capable of handling a backup role, handling the pitching staff, handling the bullpen. And some of these guys, too, that Houston has in their rotation and in the bullpen has came from Sugarland. AJ Blueball is one of them. Hunter Brown's another guy. Yainer Diaz, of course, him and Salazar were in their times in Sugarland. So he's very familiar with this group. I mean, he caught some of these games last year too when Yainer had a little small injury, not to mention. So Salzi, as I call him, has that capability to be a backup catcher. And that's if Houston wants to go that route of saving money and not having to go and spend on a backup catcher. Now, if the Astros do want to do that, you got guys like Christian Vasquez, who I had mentioned numerous times in numerous podcasts a while back. He has a familiarity with this team, this organization. Some of the pitchers, I'm pretty sure. I mean, Hunter Brown's still on there, as well as Christian Javier, who he had caught during the World Series with that combined no hitter. So that's another guy. I'm pretty sure he's not going to be looking to gain a lot of million because to be honest, he was a backup catcher with Minnesota. Most of the time, you had Ryan Jeffers be the starting catcher for Minnesota, and he was majority of the time was a backup. And that's where you can see the same thing here. And I think it'd be a good fit for Houston. Of course, Puerto Rican ties with Joe Espada, Carlos Correa, of course, being with the Twins and being Puerto Rican himself. So I think it'd be a good chemistry and good connection that it would work out as a backup catcher for Vasquez. I had mentioned Jonah Himes, another guy too that Houston could potentially look at. Of course, that's a long time rival with the Texas Rangers, but that guy didn't have a good season last year with Texas. Of course, the Rangers didn't tender his contract, and now he's a free agent. He is a Gold Glove catcher. He has a bat as well. Hits for contact, hit for power. If you remember Game 2 of the 2024 ALCS, he hit a home run to give, I believe, to give them the lead, if I'm not mistaken, or put them up by one. But it was a big, crucial home run in that series. Anyway, switch hitter too, and that's what the Astros had in Victor Caratini. He was a switch hitter, left-handed, right-handed hitter, and I think that just benefits Houston in some situations, some scenarios in games. Think about it. If Houston needs a left-handed hitter in one of these situations with runners to second and third, righty coming from the bullpen, Joe Spada could potentially put a guy like Heim in that position, especially if Yonder Diaz is struggled with that game going 0 for 3 with, say, 2 strikeouts and a ground out. So you can look into doing things like that. And I think, too, with Jonah Heim, if there's not a lot of options out there, at least starting wise, because I would think for him, he wouldn't want to start some games being a starter with the Rangers. I think that'd be a good little move for him. He could come back, go into a backup role, as well as kind of prove and show that he's capable of being a starting catcher. I believe with Victor Caratini, I want to say Ryan Jeffers is a free agent. I can check real quick. But if Ryan Jeffers is a free agent, that is the catcher. He'd be the starting for the Minnesota Twins, and he'd be a really good one because we talked about this last year too. The games that he came in situations offensively, of course, too, they put him a lot in the DH, played games at first base, and of course, in catching, he produced offensively. Defensively, too, his IQ behind the plate is really good. So, and of course, my computer don't want to show me if when I search with Ryan Jeffers, go with me as we figure out if Victor Tini will be starting for technical difficulties. You just gotta love it. And that's why Ryan Jeffers stuff did not want to pull up because my internet was stupid. Ain't that? But we're gonna continue on. I tried looking for it, still can't find it. There it goes. Entering the final year of his contract with the Twins, so it looks like Caratini might be a backup catcher for Twin Cities. As of right now, it looks like Ryan Jeffers is the guy behind the plate. But moving on, real quick, Houston first prioritize if they're going to want a backup catcher. And to me, it makes sense for them to go backup catcher. Like I mentioned, them two guys, I think them are two good fits for the Astros. Now, if you want to go the Salazar route, there's nothing wrong with that. I think he's proven the coaching staff as well as the organization that he's capable of holding that down behind Yainer Diaz. But for veteran presence or guys to continue to pick brains, like Diaz was able to look at Maldonado, he had learned from Caratini. Maybe he could look at Vasquez as another guy. So I think for me personally, my opinion, should look into getting a back catcher. It's just going to depend on how much money they can scratch off. I mean, they could still go trade a guy like Jesus Sanchez. They could still go trade like Jake. So if they shed some of that money off their contracts of their arbitration years, then more than likely they'll re-sign a catcher to go with that. Miscellaneous. We're going to finish this show off, and of course, this has been on for the past week. Signed Alex Bregman to a $5.75 million deal, and it included a no trade clause, and that was an important nugget in Bregman's contract, was getting that no trade clause. Didn't want to go anywhere and stay in one place. Now, if he does get traded, he wants to have the authority to be traded where he wants to go. Of course, he's going to get 35 AAY, so meaning each year he's going to get $35 million. So for the Cubs, I mean, I think it's a great move. Now you figure out what you're going to do Matt Shaw. You got Nico Horner at second. You got Dansby Swanson at shortstop. And, of course, at first base, you still got Michael Busch. That's a really good infield defensively. Nico Horner and Dansby have won Gold Gloves. Alex Bregman winning a Gold Glove his last year at Houston. So that is a really good team. And not to mention what Chicago got in Bregman is a guy that loves baseball. Dude, he asked for scouting reports on his teammates, trying to figure out what they could do better, how they can get better. He's just a baseball guru. And for Houston, I think that player leaving the organization really hurt them. To me personally, I think it would have been a good keep for the Astros. But of course, we've seen the free agency times and times again where the Astros let go of some guys like Garrett Cole, as well as Carlos Correa, George Springer, and you saw that with Alex Bregman. So Framber Valdez is still out there too in the free agent market. You've seen how that turned out. And for Bregman, he kind of betted on himself, and sure enough, he's got paid a good amount of money. Of $156 million, I believe, was the Astros' final offer for Alex. But hey, credit where it's due, and he really had a good year with Boston. Took away 40 AAV-wise with the Red Sox, and just subtracted by $5 million, getting 35 with the Cubs for 5 years. So I thought that was a good move for Chicago. And then Bregman's like, you know what, let me do this deal. Kyle Tucker said, you know what, hold my beer. You're making this news right here. I'm going to make a bigger news and a bigger splash. And a lot of Astros fans aren't happy with this, but Los Angeles Dodgers signed Kyle Tucker to a 4-year, $240 million deal. Not to mention gets an opt-out after his second season, which is the 2027 season. 60 AAV, meaning 60 each year. Kyle will be getting paid by the Los Angeles Dodgers. But this one's interesting because with California, they got state taxes and stuff, so it kind of puts the number a little bit more down. But my God, the LA Dodgers, that's a juggernaut over there. That's a team that the Toronto were very close to knocking down and not having them go back-to-back World Champions for the first time since the New York Yankees. But that just makes their team stronger, better. Of course, I know a lot of Astros fans had talked about his postseason credentials and hasn't been great. However, Kyle Tucker is still a good player. He didn't look. I'm pretty sure he was looking, and this is just me speaking out of it. I'm pretty sure he was probably looking for a long-term deal. Couldn't find a long-term deal. Signed one with the Dodgers, still getting paid a really good amount of money, as well as getting an opt after 2027. He wants to go test the free agent market, so it really bolstered down well for him and for the Dodgers too. They get a guy like that to put in their outfield defensively too. So, Tucker got paid. The Astros fans are not happy. Baseball fans are not happy. It's going to be an interesting year going into the 2026 offseason. Of course, not the Astros, MLB, more than likely, this is my opinion too, I think it could potentially looking at a lockout because of what this whole situation is happening. A lot of fans aren't happy. A lot of organizations too are pretty much not happy. Dodgers be getting guys like Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani. I mean, the list goes on. Teoscar Hernandez. So potentially could be going into a lockdown. We'll have to see going into next offseason. But like I mentioned, Dodgers got Kyle Tucker. Moving on to Ryan Presley, retires from baseball. I mean, you really can't say a lot about this guy for the Houston Astros. His time in Houston was miraculous. Two-time All-Star, and both of them coming from the Houston Astros. And of course, I believe every baseball knower when it comes to postseason numbers and crunching these stats down, and even Astro fans too, if they've really paid attention. 2022, the bullpen itself was just unbelievable, and it didn't have big name guys. Rafael Montero had a really good year. Same goes for Hector Neris. Your guys were Brian Bray and Ryan Presley, and it's just that memory lane for the Astros in 22 postseason in 10 games, 11 innings, got 6 saves, all done from the opportunity. Only allowed 4 hits, no earned runs, 13 strikeouts, not touching a combined no-hitter. Only the second no-hitter in postseason history, and the first being a combined no-hitter in Philadelphia, not to mention too. So kudos to Ryan Presley. I know a lot of Astro fans would like to hear Johnny Cash one more time come to the bullpen, these lights, lighting up the whole ballpark at the moment. It was called Minute Maid Park. And of course, I mean, everybody loves this. When people hurt, listen to this song. It was already.
You can run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Run on for a long time. Sooner or later, gotta cut you. Sooner or later, gotta cut you down.
Yeah, that song probably one of the most underrated songs to come out of the bullpen. Of course, you got well-known Hell's Bells. Of course, you got Enter Sandman, Fire 2 by George Straits, coming from Wagner's walkout. So when you're a closer, you got a good song. Got to have a fire song. Pepas is another one from Alex Munoz from the Seattle Mariners. Robert Suarez had a good walkout song. Of course, Trumpets by Edwin Diaz. I mean, we can go on. Fireman with the Houston Astros with Josh Hader. So when every Astro fan, or even baseball fan too, heard that song coming out of the bullpen in the 9th inning of Astros 1-run lead, they knew it was over. They knew they could count on Presley and everything like that. Kudos to a good career for Ron. I believe more than likely, I want he lived in Houston. I'm not 100% sure. But as of right now, Presley is going to be working with the Minnesota too, according to John Heyman. I don't know what position he has, but he's going to be working on. I feel like Houston going with Minnesota, Chicago, like the Chicago Astros and the Minnesota Astros. So, or the Houston Twins and the Houston Cubs. But kudos to a great career for Ryan Presley. It'd be an interesting debate too if he should be qualified for the Astros Hall of Fame, not the National Baseball Hall of Fame, Astros Hall of Fame, I think it'd be a good candidate because his years in Houston, had a great career with the Astros. Well deserved too if he does get that honor of being in the Astros Hall of Fame. That's numerous years from now. A little bit more access into this. Yankees claim right-handed pitcher Caleb Board off waivers from the Astros, and like I had mentioned earlier on the show, Victor Caratini signing a 2-year, and not even signing yet, but agreed to a 2-year contract, probably more than likely already signed with the Twins. So, still some things for the Astros need to look into going down this stretch, because it's already going to be tonight's January 19 on a Monday night. Tuesday, if you're listening to this in the morning, January 20th. I mean, there's days running out. We're getting closer to spring training. Pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting first in a spring training game as well as opening day. So a lot to get done for Houston to figure out what they're going to do and their initial plans. Are they going to trade away Isak Paredes? Are they going to keep them? Are they going to, if they do decide to get Paredes, are they going to try to acquire a landed bat, or if they're going to get a piece or some products in return? There's a lot to look into still with this infield. We won't have clear information more than likely until Astros Fan is happening this coming Saturday on the, let me see, I think it's the 24th, if I'm not mistaken. Don't have the calendar right in front of me, but don't want to guess out there. But it's going to happen Saturday. I believe it's at 10 a.m. If I'm not mistaken, it starts, and probably will finish at 3 or 4 p.m. But we will be, hopefully, with the media members, getting that information, figuring out what's the future plans of the Astros, trying to see what they're going to do. Of course, we got the interviews with some of the players that are going to be attending FanFest and going to be available to the media. So if you want all that information, of course, like I had put in the bottom and I've said in the beginning of the show, make sure you tune in and subscribe to our YouTube channel on Full Steam Ahead. Make sure you hit that notification bell, so when those interviews do get continued and we can post it on our YouTube channel, you will be able to watch it and see all the information regarding what the players and what the manager, what the GM has to say about going into 2026 MLB season. Of course, TikTok, we're right there, as well as Twitter, Full Steam Ahead, FSA Full Steam Ahead on Instagram. And if you're on the road, you're taking your kids to school, because of course some kids majority, I would say, had Martin Luther King Day off. So if you're taking the kids into school in the morning, you're driving to work on 45, because I know 45 is hectic, 59 is hectic, or you're on your way to dinner. You want to listen to us, get all that Astros inside, and then you could tell your significant other, your date, if you're going on a date, hey, this potentially happened. These are some packages that the Astros can be doing if they try to trade Isak Paredes. Right there. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Like, rate, subscribe. Give us that feedback, comments. We really, really appreciate it. But it's going to be another full season of Astros baseball. Of course, 2026. There's a lot more, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show. You got the college baseball coming to Minute Maid. Well, Dyken Park, sorry about that. In February, March, you got the World Baseball Classic, as well as the start of the 2026 MLB season. So, like I mentioned, we are here, and we are the number one source when it comes to all these news and information and interviews and everything like that. So please, if you haven't done so, make sure you go hit that subscribe button. But until then, we'll see what happens. If there's something that goes down, like a trade or a big signing, we're going to be able to get that emergency podcast out, and we'll let you know. So if anything, maybe next week we'll talk and record. Of course, if you're on Twitter, that's where we throw out our news. So till then, y'all stay safe, y'all be blessed, and talk to y'all later.